All right, to South Africa now, where activists are protesting a new wave of violence against women. Several women were recently raped and brutally murdered there. The killings have sparked nationwide outrage and led to growing calls for change. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke to protesters earlier. He vowed to implement stronger measures against attackers while offering women more protections.
We are going to be addressing the issue of the harsh penalties so that the men who violate women, who rape women, and who kill women must stay in jail for life.
All right, CBS News foreign correspondent Debora Patta is following the story from Johannesburg. Deborah, these are shocking developments there. What's the latest? And as these protests intensify, what kind of changes can we expect from the government? It's one thing to make a speech to the crowd. It's another to actually implement some real policy.
Exactly that, and a speech that came a little bit too late, according to many women in South Africa, because for much of this week it seemed that officials were dismissing the seething rage of women in this country, sparked by another brutal murder of a young woman in Cape Town. And if you look at the figures in South Africa, they are excruciatingly horrifying. Every 3 hours, a woman is murdered in this country. Every 36 seconds, a woman is raped. And those are police statistics. So you can imagine they are probably a lot higher because many of these crimes go unreported. And what makes it even harder is that many of the suspects, many of these men who kill and rape women, walk among them. They are in their homes, in their churches, in their schools, in their beds. And women are saying, we are unsafe. Men have declared war on us, and enough is enough. So today, Cyril Ramaphosa was finally dragged from the World Economic Forum in Africa, which is taking place in Cape Town, to address protesters, and he has promised strong action. He said that rapists will no longer get bail, that men who commit gender violence will get harsher, stiffer sentences, and they plan to set up special courts to prosecute gender-based violence. But it might be not enough, because women are saying they don't feel safe and they want something far stronger and a very strong sign from government that things are going to change. At the moment, as you correctly point out, it's all rhetoric.
Yeah, and so, Deborah, it's unfortunate and sad that we threw up those statistics as you were talking about them. The level of violence that has been exhibited against women in South Africa for many years. There have been these recent brutal murders. But what exactly led to this particular movement? What is it about this moment that has led women to take to the streets to demand a better treatment?
Well, the tipping point was the murder of a 19-year-old film student, a university student, Uyinene Mtwichana, and she went to a post office to collect a parcel. Broad daylight on a weekend, she went to this post office. The official said, the electricity is off, I can't trace it, come back a little bit later after hours and I'll keep it for you, which she duly did. She went back. Again in broad daylight, but there was no one left at work. He dragged her into the post office, butchered her with a scale of all things in the post office, raped her repeatedly until she was unconscious. She briefly regained conscious, fought back. She went down screaming, kicking, fighting. No one came. Eventually she was murdered and her body dumped elsewhere. And what is even more horrifying is that police seem to be unable to do anything about this particular crime. She was missing for many days. Her parents, out of desperation, eventually hired private investigators, and they caught this man and took him to court, and he has now confessed. That trial will take place. So really it's become a tipping point, perhaps because she was a university student known to so many. She was in fact even a friend of my own daughter who's at the same university. And these students are saying this is not right. As women, we should not have to fear simply walking in the streets to do a basic chore. And that is why they have now taken to the streets. And I don't think these protests are going to end. They're going to continue for some time because women have had enough. And you're seeing women of all ages engaging in this action.
And Deborah, there's also been a surge in xenophobic violence against foreigners. I mean, you know, what's going on there?
I know, as if the gender-based violence and this brutal murder wasn't enough, Vlad. In Johannesburg, we've seen the xenophobic attacks. Now, as you well know, these flare up often in this country where you get African South Africans attacking other African nationals from other countries on this continent. And usually it's sparked when there's an economic downturn, as there is in South Africa right now. There is massive unemployment in this country, and there is huge job shortages. So people then find scapegoats, and those scapegoats are foreign nationals whom they say are stealing their jobs. This is blatantly untrue. About 4% of the population of about 60 million in this country are foreign nationals, and usually they work outside the formal economy, setting up little businesses, enterprises, innovative things, as many immigrants do everywhere around the world, and contribute in that way to this country. But they're accused of stealing jobs, so people turn on them, attack them, and in this particular case, attacked shops, attacked people, killing 7 people in the process. And what's worse is that people felt so powerless. They felt that there was no protection. Police simply weren't coming to their aid while this was going on. And now you've seen huge anger from other African countries who are saying that this is not right. So we've seen African nations pulling out of the World Economic Forum, which is taking place in Cape Town. Soccer matches between South Africa and other countries have been affected. A huge cultural event at the end of the year has seen many African artists pull out of that because they're saying, we can't come to this country, we don't feel safe.
Such important reporting, Debora. Thank you very much. And I just can't stop thinking about Uyi Nene, if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, because it's just horrific. No woman should have to face that. But as you point out, perhaps this is the tipping point. Perhaps this will lead to some real change in South Africa. Debora Patta for us in Johannesburg. Thank you, Debora.